Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are blazing through the Poppy Wars, and we are in part 2 of R.F. Kuang's Poppy War series, The Dragon Republic. But before we get into so many thoughts, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Okay, so I am continuing my Marvel journey, and I watched Ant-Man.
What'd you think?
That wasn't too bad. I mean, I wouldn't be like, oh, this is the best one, but it wasn't too bad. I don't have any like scathing remarks from it. It was just kind of a like
straightforward.
It was there.
Superhero movie.
Yeah.
I think I really liked Ant-Man when it first came out. I thought it was
I kind of was
cute.
like, why can't Evangeline Lilly be Ant-Woman? But apparently they just didn't want to go with that. They had to have Paul Rudd be Ant-Man, which not totally fair because Evangeline Lilly was very qualified for the role, but I guess because her mom disappeared into dust and became atomic, that they decided that wasn't the best way to go, which whatever, that's a take, but she was more qualified. That's all I will say on it. Otherwise,
good to know.
It was okay.
I like it. I think that's awesome. Can't wait for you to get to the next.
The next one is Captain America: Civil War, and I've heard a lot of good things.
That's a good one. I think that, I mean, it's a little bit messy because there's just so many of them in those movies. But
I mean,
it's
I
more
think
Tony
a lot
Stark,
of the Captain America ones are good.
Yeah, but you also have like a thing about Tony Stark, so I think it could go.
I know.
Either way.
Is he in this pretty heavily?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a little anti-Stark Enterprises. So
we'll have to see.
We'll see how that goes. If he's super heavy on the bad humor, then I might not be interested. And if Captain America is very heavy on the we need to follow the rules, guys, then I'm not going to be too interested.
I will say that Captain America Civil War is one where he is not like, we need to follow the rules, guys. So.
Okay, well, he's like that in the Avengers movies always.
Again, in his defense, Joss Whedon really hates muscle guys, and that was who he was in those
I suppose.
movies, so.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't feel like all muscle guys are always about following the rules, though, like that, where it comes off annoying. But maybe the ones he knows are. I guess
it's like a whole thing. He was definitely the guy who grew up and thought like, one day all the girls are going to be after me, and then
I'm a brainy guy, so one day people will care about
definitely
that.
Like
not
Robert Downey Jr.
Because he's not extremely attractive, right? Okay,
God. Yeah.
That all lines up. So with that being said, I also have 2 books to talk about that I read. Good. I guess 4. But I'm not going to talk about 2 of them. I read volume 2 of Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
And that's the one you're going to talk about today.
No. And then I read volume 10 of Lumberjanes, Friendship to the Max. But the ones I'm going to talk about, I read The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren.
How was it?
I really loved it.
You love Christina Lauren.
But here's the thing. Somebody had a review on Goodreads, because I love to read the Goodreads reviews.
You do?
And they said this is one of the better ones.
Oh.
And I was like, maybe I've only read Christina Lauren's really good ones, like their hits. And I haven't read the middle of the road stuff. Because I've read In a Holidays and The Soulmate Equation and the Unhoneymooners, like their 3 most popular ones. And I'm thinking maybe I haven't read their, kind of starting material that wasn't quite as good. And now they're starting to kind of get into their groove with some of this newer stuff.
Sometimes you can skip over first ones. Like, I think too many people are like, if you love something, then you have to read through them all. And like, that's like Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm probably not going to read anything before the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Like, I'm just not going to go back into that oeuvre of hers. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just don't need to be a completionist about that particular author.
I did not know that there was stuff before that. I only knew of that one and Daisy Jones. So
and there's also
bad on me.
There's also Malibu Rising, which I read.
Oh yeah,
which is another one of her newer ones. And then she's about to come out with another one. But some of her older ones are like much more romancy. Like,
okay,
woman wakes up from a coma and like she doesn't remember some of her life or something.
Oh, okay.
And
so,
like she's written a couple of those.
Plot of many romance books.
Exactly. And so I think like sometimes it's just okay to be like, I don't need to see every single thing you've ever done. I can just
and that's fair.
But no, I'm glad that you liked the book and like
I mean, it was good, and I think it's one where it wasn't like enemies to lovers necessarily, but it was, I guess it qualifies for Grumpy Sunshine, where they started off, they didn't really know each other and were kind of like, oh, well, you don't like me. And it's like, you guys have never talked. Why would he not like you? And then they started to just like slowly kind of become friends and then started to like each other. And it was a slow burn. There was never really one of those moments where it was like, oh, we've broken up for a while over something ridiculous.
Right. And miscommunication trope.
I mean, there was a miscommunication, but they never like cut it off. So I appreciated that. I kind of like the slow burn rather than like, oh, we have a chapter where they're not together and they go to an event and miss the other one. Like, come on. But yeah, I think I prefer Grumpy Sunshine to Enemies to Lovers. And this was like about an app that is set up where you submit some DNA and then they match you with a soulmate because there's this scientist, this company
equation,
that has,
if you will,
exactly an equation, if you will, and so they've figured out that there's a genetic link to falling in love, or I guess genetic link would be the way that you would say it, to falling in love. So they look at people's genes and try to match them up with who would be a compatible person, and it's pretty good. I liked it. It was one that I read at a good time because I feel like sometimes you read certain books and you're like, this is just not hitting me at the moment. But that one definitely hit. And I just like read it and I was like really into it. I read it really fast and I smiled a lot. So
that's good.
Yeah. And the last book that hit me like that was The Charm Offensive. So
okay.
I've been kind of liking some of these romance books lately. A few of them have been hitting the right spot, and I really appreciate what some of these authors are doing for the genre.
So someone recently like brought up like, oh, that line really gave me the feels. And it made me realize like what I love so much about romance is it just makes you like giddy on the inside for a second. Like you just get really excited for people. And there's something about like romantic dynamics where you're just like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. And you just get to see like two people like each other. And like, I just love that so much.
Well, and like I was telling my husband about the soulmate equation. He was like, oh, is that like your type of guy? Or what? I'm like, no, not at all. But I don't
know what type of guy are you? We've been successfully married.
Are you a scientist? No.
Is that your type of guy? I don't know. We've been married for a pretty long time. What do you think, my guy?
He still hasn't figured out what type he is. But anyways, I was just like, no, I just like the book because it kind of makes you feel good and it's fun to read about people falling in love. So you don't have to necessarily be like, ooh, yeah, like totally into that guy. Like, no, or girl, you know, you don't have to be like that. It's just nice to read about people that love each other.
Exactly. I think that there's certain romances that I love the romance between the two parties. Yes. And then there are ones where like people, I think there's a difference like when you see a TikTok or an Instagram post where it's like, who are my favorite book boyfriends? And I'm like, well, book boyfriends are a different genre than just like, because like Emily Henry, I always say that like Gus is my ultimate, but like Charlie in Book Lovers is such a good book boyfriend. Like I can totally get why people like simp over him. So I think,
or Nezha, you know, like
this book is convincing Laura and Hannah that they are not enemies to lovers.
That takes enemies to lovers to the extreme. Anyways, as you were saying, book boyfriends.
But yeah, I think like book boyfriends are cute, and like, but there's a difference between like, oh, I love the romance in this, and like I would want to date this person.
Like that is my type.
Yeah. Because like I love the Brown Sisters trilogy, but I don't think any of the boys in that are like men I would prefer to date. Like I think I liked them for the girls because their romances were so adorable.
Yeah, agreed.
So there's just a little bit of a difference. And like People We Meet on Vacation, I thought that was a cute romance, but I would never want to date Alex, I think his name was. So yeah, there's just a difference. But that's good. I'm glad that you are opening up because Laura, like at the beginning of this podcast, was not so into the romance.
I've not read a lot of romance, so this is really branching out.
You are becoming a new person, Laura.
I am. I really am. Yeah. The other book I read was Sula by Toni Morrison.
Ooh, how was that?
So I've read several of her works now.
Yes, you have.
I've read Beloved, Song of Solomon, and The Bluest Eye also. I would say that Sula was my least favorite, but it's still an excellent book. So that's really not saying that much.
Right.
I mean, to say it's my least
it's
favorite.
Your least favorite Toni Morrison book.
Like excellent writing.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a book where you have to look at the characters and the situations that they're going through and kind of take a perspective of, oh, you know, not everything is black and white, and sometimes the characters can do something and they're not off the hook. You know, they can do something that seems like it's right and they're not off the hook, or they can do something that seems wrong and maybe they're not as wrong as other people are as well. You know, like there's a situation that happens in the book, spoilers for Sula. Hannah, do you care if I spoil this?
No, go.
Where two friends, Sula and Nell, grow up together, and they are raised in really different households and have really different lives, but they really connect over just kind of feeling kind of like outsiders. But they end up going for a walk one day and they meet up with a little boy from their neighborhood, and they end up pushing him on the swing. He ends up jumping off the swing or being pushed off the swing and falling in a river and drowning. Sula was the one pushing him on the swing, and Nell was the one just standing there watching. So from the two characters' perspective, and from that moment, everything kind of changed. And from the two characters' perspectives, they saw things differently. One, Nell kind of always blamed it on Sula, that she was the one doing it. And you find out later in the book that some of the other people in town were like, you're not off the hook. You just stood there and watched as he drowned. You didn't try to go help him or anything, you know, so you're just as active in this little boy's death as Sula was pushing him on the swing. You know, like nobody's off the hook here. So it's a really interesting book. I'd recommend people reading it. It's short. It's easy to read. Yeah, totally recommend picking it up. But Toni Morrison is just a really excellent writer. And I think the situations that she writes, and it's all fiction, but I think the situations feel so real and come off in a way where you have to think about situations in your own life where you're like, oh, well, you know what, maybe I need to not be as harsh the way that I think about certain people or situations that have happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Not everything is black and white.
Yeah. But really good book. Really, really good.
Good. I'm glad you liked it.
Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
So I started, Laura continued on her Marvel journey. I took a darker turn and started watching Harley Quinn, the animated series on HBO Max. It's very cute. I forget how much I just enjoy animated series. Like I think I'm someone who really likes
Archer and BoJack.
Yeah, I really like animated series. I think it's like so unique and it's nice to watch like the process of it. And like sometimes the comic book show, like you can feel how like quick it is, but like it's amazing that they get out these seasons. I really like what they did with the Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn characters. They do a great job of showing like just the dynamics of an abusive relationship with Harley and the Joker, and like the ramifications of leaving that kind of relationship. And it's really funny to like it's a lot more graphic than I was expecting, but like
Okay.
that's not a bad thing. It was just like in the first episode, she's like breaking people's kneecaps and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh.
This is an adult.
But it's very much an adult show. And I like it's just very cute. And it kind of gives a good homage to some of like the more recent comics with the Harley Quinn character. Cause I don't know if you know much about her background.
Oh, absolutely zero, but
okay.
Don't really care. So go ahead and spoil.
Well, like, oh no, I didn't think you would care about spoilers. If you don't care, I could also just move on. But Harley Quinn was a character who wasn't actually created in the comic books originally. Like the Joker had henchmen and henchwomen who kind of looked like her, but she was actually created in the animated series as like his girlfriend. And she was just like in one episode and people just liked her. So then the animated
probably because there were like very few girls. So
yeah. And I think it was just interesting to see like a woman be like kind of criminally insane. And so they are clinically, have mental health issues, I guess, but this is also a comic book. So yeah. But anyway, so they like added to her character with lots of layers. And then she ended up getting like her own comic book backstory based on the animated series, which is pretty like huge.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. And like, throughout time, the Harley Quinn character, like for a long time, she was just like in the jester outfit where she's just Joker's girlfriend. He's definitely manipulative. And I think like there's been such a resurgence of like what it looks like to be in an abusive relationship after this character was created, that now they've kind of like begun to let the character grow. And now she's been in like more queer romances outside of the Joker. And like, it kind of just shows like healing with a person who's still not a good person. And I always think that that's kind of interesting because like, or like,
definitely
she does bad things. She is like, and at the beginning it was like, oh, she was like this great psychiatrist who like fell in love with the Joker and he like convinced her to do these things. But as time has gone on, she's become more of like no, she always had mental health issues. And then she got into a relationship with a bad guy because of mental health issues, like drew them together. And she has a lot more agency in the newer storylines than ever before. And that's really good. I really like the Birds of Prey movie. I really like this TV show. I think it's funny to like watch characters who are like, no, we're good people. But like, we do have to go murder those guys because we do need to like do this heist.
Right.
Like, it's very funny and different. I made a joke about one of my brothers-in-law, how our entire relationship is recommending each other TV shows. And he literally like came on recently and he was like, have you watched Reservoir Dogs? And I was like, no, have you watched Harley Quinn? And he was like, I'll add it to my list. And then he was like, is The Bear on your list? And I was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, have you watched Severance? And he's like, no, but I'll wait until we like re-up our Apple TV for Ted Lasso.
Oh my gosh.
Compare TV rap sheets or it's like, what's on your list? What's on my list? Okay, well, and he's like, tell me when you watch season 2, episode 2 of Reservation Dogs. Cause I want to know what you're like. I want to know if you laughed as hard as I did. And I was like, the the King Shark on Harley Quinn is my favorite character. Cause he's just like off the wall and just says like the most random stuff. So that was our little like tit for tat. So I've been watching it. I'm already on season 2. I like it a lot. I just think that like adult cartoons are really interesting. They're just like so unique because I also watch like Big Mouth.
They're doing a lot of good things with that genre of TV. I mean, and it's become really unique and not all within the same like oeuvre of Family Guy and Simpsons. So I appreciate that.
And like, I feel like there's been a little bit more nuance because you also know I was never a Family Guy fan. Like, I just thought it was a little bit like mean.
Sure.
And I feel like with these like more recent shows, they're doing all the weird stuff that like you and I talk about loving with Umbrella Academy, but they're also doing it in such a way where like they get to push the envelope a little bit because these are cartoon characters. And so it might be showing like some pretty heinous stuff. But you do feel a little bit of like a layer of like, okay, it's okay to watch this because these are cartoons. This isn't real life. Where I think if you were like actually watching a movie with all of this violence, you would be like, oh my God, like this is really unsettling. But there is like that, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it is
it's where you can like suspend your disbelief.
Well, and they like, people have talked about that with like BoJack Horseman, where like it was important to kind of have animals involved because it was easier to watch like animals and humans do like really weird, messed up crap that like you knew it couldn't, like this specific thing couldn't literally happen. You don't have a horse walking around, but like I do think that there is a little bit of people get to try new things and they get to be a little bit weirder because you just get to suspend your disbelief. Like in one episode, they all go into Harley Quinn's mind and like they get in an elevator and the shark fin like hits the button to the wrong level. And it's like, well, you couldn't do this in a regular TV show.
I feel like with cartoons, you have the agency to explore more difficult topics and like push the limit a little with humor as well, where it's like, okay, you know, if that were in a regular show with people in it, I don't know if I'd be okay with that joke. Whereas like a lot of times in cartoons, they'll say something, you're like, okay, well, it's a cartoon. And it's like, it's literally the same joke, but I would feel differently about it if it was people saying it. So,
I mean, Jason Mantzoukas gets a pillow pregnant and Big Mouth.
Exactly.
That's such a weird dynamic to just have in a show.
Well, and going to like BoJack Horseman, you know, having animals talk about some of those really heavy topics, I think makes it more palatable to viewers to be able to talk about and sit with some of those things.
There's also still blatant misogyny and things like it, where it's just like, really, really in BoJack Horseman, there's so many people who are like, one of the characters, Diane, who like does some toxic stuff. They're like, she's just as bad as BoJack, and it's like, no, she's not. She is not as bad as BoJack Horseman. Like, he's a terrible person, and it's all about like sometimes you have to have your comeuppance, and sometimes you maybe aren't as good as you want to be, and like you can't just be toxic to everyone around you because of that. But that's one of my favorite shows. Those literally, I talk about when my mom passed away, his line where he's like, my mom is dead and everything is worse now, that like played on a loop in my head for a good 24 hours. And then I also have been saying this phrase a lot lately. The phrase from one of BoJack's love interests where she said, at the beginning of a relationship, you wear rose-colored glasses, and when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all those red flags just look like flags. And it's like, oh God, that is just such a poetic line. So that show's so good. And then for books, Buddy read The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna with Dylan from FTF, and we both really liked it. It was good. I listened to Brent. Yes, Brent from FTF.
He sometimes goes by Brent.
Make sure you tweet that at him or not, because he would get mad at me. But we both listened to the audiobook. I really liked it. I think it's like, I've seen a couple of books lately that kind of have this premise where it's like people have a different colored blood that sets them apart from other people.
As you say, that was like your last book too.
Yeah, I just wrote a review on The Final Strife, and that was similar. But in this book, you have a bunch of 16-year-old girls who know that they have to like go through this ceremony at the village, like a village, to make sure they're pure. And to make sure they do that, they cut the girls and they have to bleed red, or else they are these like beings who can't die. And they see them as like horrifying, like things like pretty much Satan brought up. And we meet a girl at the beginning, and she does have golden blood, and she has to be like taken away from her house. You find out like her mother was from a different land, so she had already been ostracized based on the color of her skin. And she kind of has to find her own found family. I was really shocked by, this is a YA novel, and it is pretty dark.
Packs a punch.
Yeah, it packed a punch in like very early books where I thought it was going to go one way and it did not. Some things are very easily culled. It definitely is. We got on a conversation of like what makes a book YA. And I do think some of the themes are a little bit more on the nose, but also like the fact that this book exists for teenagers is incredible, because it deals with such like specific themes of like religion, purity culture, colorism, racism, sexism. Like it deals with all of that, and like the trauma of like what girls have to go through to like bleed for the rights of others and like all of those things. And I think that that's a very interesting take to have young girls read about. There's a little bit of romance. There is a good frank discussion of like sex in a very healthy way. And I just thought that this book was really good. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars, mostly because some of it held me back from like falling deeply in love with the book. It just felt rushed in some parts and too slow in others. But again, this is a book for children.
Yeah, which you saying that, I was like, I feel like there's been a discussion on Bookstagram a lot recently, which I don't know if it has been on TikTok or not. I'm not on TikTok, but I'm sure it has, because it seems like things start on TikTok and then make their way to Bookstagram. But it's apparently a thing where people have been reading YA books and then going on Goodreads and or Amazon and then reviewing them and rating them poorly because they don't think the themes are adult enough. And it's like, this is a YA book. And apparently it's really prevalent in terms of like romance books and books where people want more smut out of them. And it's like,
I have seen that discourse on Instagram. This is a
YA book. Like, we can't have tons of sex in this. I mean, I'm sorry, but you need to read a different book. This is for children, so there's not going to be tons of sex. It's going to fade to black. That's how it's going to work.
Right. That's just how romance works. The other thing
too is like, people were saying, you know what, if you aren't able to rate these books appropriately, maybe you need to either not read them or rate on a curve or something. Recognize that this genre is for a certain age group and that you are older than this age group, and maybe some of the themes and some of the storylines are going to be too simplistic for you.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like, we were talking, because I would say that this book is pretty adult for YA. Not saying that, like,
well, and it's a really broad genre too. I'm not saying that all YA is really simplistic, or that's not my point.
No, of course not. No. And I don't think you're saying that, but I'm saying like these had a lot darker themes than I was expecting in a YA book. But like, to the point where, like, I think Dylan at one point, he was like, what makes this YA and other books not YA? And I was like, that's an interesting topic about this particular book. Cause like, usually I would say like lighter themes, but I do think like the themes were a little bit more specific and they definitely hit home. And it was definitely about this.
A lot of times the age of the characters too seems like that.
Coming of age.
Things YA.
Yeah. There's usually like first love type romances or something like that. And a lot of times, like, there were certain terms that are like more like adult words for vocabulary, where then they would learn immediately after what that word meant in a very clunky way. But it's like, that's how young adults learn words. You're not going to just have all the context clues that you might have if you were an actual adult reading this novel.
Right.
But I do agree with you. I like to grade things on a curve when it comes to young adult books.
Yeah, I do it with middle grade stuff too, because I read middle grade stuff every now and then. And it's like, you know what? I can read this book and be like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. I totally called where this is going. It's like, Laura, you're 30 years old. This is a book for 5th graders.
And I guess that's kind of the whole point, is like, technically these books aren't for us, but we do get to enjoy them. But that doesn't mean we should like read them and just be like, ooh, guess what?
And the other side of this too is like, you know what, if books have issues and they are problematic, or you genuinely do not like them, you are entitled to give a review as you see fit. However, it's a different story when it's like people saying, oh, well, it's just, I called every single thing that was going to happen in this book. It's like, well, of course you did.
Right. Well, that goes along the lines of like,
Percy Jackson is so dumb. He kept asking all these questions. It's like, Percy Jackson is 12.
Yeah.
Come on.
And people just don't get it. And I've seen like some discourse around like how to talk to children. And I think like adults are not trained to talk to children. It is not something that they're trained to do. And they think they can. And like, it's silly. And that's, I mean, I recently read all the Sarah Dessen novels, and usually my critiques of my review were like, I don't think young girls should read this anymore. Like, that was where I was coming from, not from like this book is so stupid. I was like, well, let me make sure I know the context of what I'm reading.
When you're critiquing the situations that happen or themes, it's different than being like, I totally knew who she was going to fall in love with, and that's why I gave it 2 stars.
This is so predictable. And it's just like, yeah, it's predictable, but like, good, so the Gilded One, it has cute friendships, it has cute love interests, like it's just a very sweet novel, very dark in some places, but I highly recommend everyone pick it up because
I picked it up. A lot. You guys influenced me. I went to the library and it was like one of the first books that was sitting out in the YA section. I was like, oh, I'm gonna read it.
They just read this book.
It was fate.
It was fate, and I had read it right behind the final strife, and so it was two women very of color who wrote about blood as a metaphor, and I loved them both in their own unique ways, and one was adult and one was YA, and they were appropriately so.
Sure.
And then I also read The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. These are both audiobooks because Hannah's in a little bit of a physical book reading slump. I'm trying to bust it with a historical fiction novel that seems very, very light. But I'll talk about that next week, I'm sure. But yeah, so I did The Sundown Motel, and Laura, that book had ghosts in it.
Wow, I'm proud of you. They were
prevalent, and it was in audiobook form, which does help Hannah not have to imagine as quickly because the sound in her head is not painting as vivid as a picture. But I was able to listen to the entire thing, even though the beginning pointed out that it had ghosts. And I thought for a minute, and I thought, I think I can handle this one. And I did. So,
good job.
Self-growth.
I'm proud of you. You're doing so many ghost things lately.
What was my other ghost thing?
I think, didn't you watch a movie that had ghosts in it recently or something?
I don't think so.
I thought you did.
Maybe I watched a movie with ghosts, but this one was...
Oh no, you watched Jaws. Never mind. That wasn't a ghost. I don't know why I was thinking you watched something with ghosts.
It's because I watched Jaws and then back to back with Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
And we always tell the story about how I first watched Silence of the Lambs, and Laura made me watch it before I had to wander a creepy house, and I had trouble sleeping that night.
It's not that scary.
It was scary in the context of having to walk around our empty sorority house afterwards. Like I had to go. I
find Sweeney Todd to be scarier than that movie.
I've never seen Sweeney Todd.
It's what it is. I don't know how to describe it.
It is what it is until it isn't anymore.
Yeah.
But no, that's because of Silence of the Lambs. But The Sundown Motel was fine. I mean, it was just murder mystery. It was pretty straightforward. Okay. Apparently, she does a lot of paranormal in her books. And once I found that out, I was like, this doesn't feel very unique. It just kind of feels like rote. Like people love her. She's everywhere on Bookstagram. Like the cover was what brought me in. And I thought it was just like thriller mystery, and I didn't even realize it was paranormal until I started it. And so I got her other books because they're easy listens, but it's just so many mysteries have like self-insert characters that are so obvious where it's like, I'm such a nerd. I wear glasses and have long black hair, and two men are obsessed with me. But like, I don't know why, because I've never even kissed a boy. I'm just 23. And it's like,
I just got fired from my job that I had, and
she dropped out of college. She dropped out of college.
I had to move back home, and there's my high school boyfriend who was dating somebody else. But
are you talking about all the missing girls
across a bar? Yes. All the missing girls. What is your definition of all?
There are two. There are a few missing girls.
A couple missing girls is the title. A couple.
Oh, yeah. So I would say,
Miranda, you could do better. Come on. A couple missing girls. A couple
missing girls. Just a few.
Not even a few.
It's two. I have two missing girls. But yeah, so it was fine. I think I was more proud of myself because I had listened to a book with ghosts in it, and that is not Hannah's brand whatsoever.
Was it a full cast or no?
It was a full cast of ghosts, and like at first I was like, "Oh, it's just gonna be."
It was all ghosts.
No. I just mean that there were quite a few ghosts, and some of them had like the only purpose of being ghosts, which is actually creepier to me than like when people have like touches of paranormal, where it's like, oh, she came to see her murderer and she pointed to him, but was it really her, or was I picturing the ghost? Like that doesn't creep me out as much. There's like a little boy running around and interacting with people in the novel, and I was like, this freaks me out. want a small child just running around.
Ghost whisperer concept doesn't bother you as much, where it's like people have unfinished business and they want to sort it out before they move on. It's more like there's a small child that we can't figure out why he and his twin are here, and they're staring at us. Like, that's the stuff that freaks
or like
out.
Haunted houses where it's like there's just tons of like bad spirits. That freaks me out beyond all possible belief, because I think I feel like I'm not the type of person who will interact with the ghost who has unfinished business. So like the likelihood they come see me is so small, because most people know I'm afraid of ghosts. So why would they come see me as their unfinished business? It's like, I mean, what do you have to prove? Hannah's already scared of you.
So my brother-in-law and his wife and their kids, they just moved, but they used to live in this house, and the person that lived in it before them died in the house. And I think it was natural causes. There was never anything like that or whatever, anything foul play. But they were convinced that his ghost was there. They were like, yeah, he's definitely here. Like, weird things happen. Sometimes doors open and stuff like that, and we can't explain it. He's definitely here. And I guess I didn't really buy it, but I could definitely see, if there was some kind of unfinished business, I guess, that maybe he attached himself to the place. I don't know.
I just don't. Here's the thing. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I don't want to find out I'm wrong. Like, I don't want them to come up to me and prove that they exist. I'm good. Like, we're fine. Just no thank you.
Yeah, just pretend they're not there.
So I would rather pretend that they're not there and hope they don't come see me. If anyone wants to know, my sister told me when I was 5, she saw my dead grandma, and it freaked me out beyond all possible belief. And I was never able to look out towards my garage at night, which is where she said she saw her. And I used to cry when I had to go down there. And then when I told my mom that that's why I was afraid of ghosts, she was like, funny story. I think I saw your grandmother too. So that just like cemented the ghost fear. So it comes from somewhere.
Sure. It stems from something.
Yeah. So
I also had an experience similar to that. Only I was the one that supposedly saw the person that was dead. But I was at my grandma's one time when I was little, and supposedly this was not long after my great grandmother had passed away, but I supposedly saw her and was saying, what's she doing over there? Why does she have those curlers in her hair? And I kept saying it, and they were like, what? And it really freaked out my grandma and my aunts, because they're like, really how would you even know about those curlers? Like, you would not. And apparently I described them to them, and like as a 4-year-old. So like
that unsettles me so much.
They were unsettled by it. They still talk about it. And I'm like, I don't remember it.
I don't like that.
Don't know anything about the curlers. So
yeah, I'm a huge scaredy cat, guys. I don't do well with anything challenging.
I'm weirdly like more of a scaredy cat when it comes to like, oh, Laura, do you want to walk down in the Grand Canyon? I'm like, sure, but I have to be on the wall side, because I don't want to fall down into this big gaping hole. Like, I'm a chicken about that kind of stuff. But
See, or people are like, do you want to go
skydiving? I'm like, no way.
I'm not that afraid of heights, because like, I don't know. I recently told Laura this. I didn't realize how weird it was until I became an adult, but my grandfather died by plane accident, where he was flying a plane and someone else collided with him, and that is one of those strangest things to think about as an adult.
Never happens.
It never happens, but it happened to my grandpa.
It's so rare.
I don't know what to tell you.
It's one of those things that you said it to me in just like casual conversation, and I was like, how could you not have mentioned that before? Because
because I never met him. Like,
we've been in sorority events where we've played those games before, like, list some interesting facts about yourself, and Hannah's like, I have red hair, and it's like, Hannah, we can all tell you have red hair. Tell us about how your grandpa died.
But that's so morbid. Like, that's not like a fun fact to bring out at parties where it's like, you want to know how my grandpa died?
I think it's interesting.
Plane collision.
It'd be perfect for Two Truths and a Lie. Like, nobody would guess that.
So morbid. I never met my grandfather.
I'm not trying to make light of this situation. No, I just find it so interesting.
I just would laugh so hard if you like pull up my dating profile and it's like Two Truths and a Lie. It's like my grandpa died by a plane collision. Like, that's so strange.
I mean, you'll find out who the real people to go on dates with are.
Because I grew up with that, I feel like I'm not afraid of heights. I kind of know that, like, hey, if you die by like plane accident, a lot of times you have a heart attack before you actually die because your body can't handle the stress of the situation. So like, I'm not really that fearful of all that stuff because, like, yeah, it sounds like it'd be a terrible way to die, but you'd be dead at the end of it. But like ghosts, I have to experience them and live with the knowledge that I saw one, and I don't want that kind of pressure.
Are you afraid of real people, like living people? Because I am often afraid of living people.
I'm afraid of everyone. People
like I never trust people. There was one time I was riding with my mom in the car and it was nighttime and these people were at the side of the road and they started like waving and coming out into the road. She pulls over and I'm going, no, go. But this is Midwestern hospitality, apparently.
No, it's not.
Where she's like, what's going on? And was offering to help him. But literally, I had a similar experience where I was driving by myself then a couple of years later on the way to work. And I saw somebody coming in from the ditch, like walking towards my car, like waving. I literally like swerved to get around them and floored it. Like there was no way I was stopping for this person.
Well,
and they like laugh at me because they're like, oh, you don't trust anybody. I'm like, no, people are scary. I don't trust them.
Also, like, no, you're a woman alone in her car. Like, my dad used to like pick up hitchhikers in the like 70s and 80s. And like in the 70s, mostly when he was a single guy, and he would like just take them home. And like once my parents were married, one day my mom came home and dad was sitting there playing chess with a hitchhiker.
Oh my gosh,
my mom was
way.
like, okay, have fun. And then later she was like, dude, like, you cannot just bring strangers into our home. Like,
this is apparently a thing that people did. My grandma talks about how her dad used to bring home he used to work at a garage. He was a mechanic and he would bring home random truck drivers who needed a place to stay and they would just stay at their house. And it's like, you have a small child and your wife here too. Like, what the world? No.
So maybe there weren't more
like, I'm gonna just bring some random dude home.
Maybe there weren't more murderers in like the 70s and 80s. Maybe it was just like people kept bringing strangers into their home and there was more opportunities. Like, don't do that. But my dad like used to do that. And he like specifically as we were growing up, he was like, I could have done that. You girls don't do that. Don't ever do that. Don't pull over. Don't interact. Like, no. So I'm with you on this. I don't think you're strange for it. Weird turn of events. I don't even know how we got all the way down this road, but I'm bringing it back.
We are having a riveting conversation, though, I will say.
It is fascinating, but we should get into the fascinating topic of the Dragon Republic.
Let's do it.
All right. So they arrive at the Dragon Province, and Nezha wants to show Rin his like town. And there are red cliffs that make it almost impossible to infiltrate. There are old Nikaran phrases written like somewhere, and Nezha and Katai argue over if it means nothing lasts or the world does not exist. It's noted that the Dragon Emperor's death and the Great Fight meant the Dragon Province tried to stay neutral during that time, and they were actually torn apart. And Nezha says that this was an epigram written to kind of show that no loyalties and no empire lasts. Therefore, the world is ephemeral, making Katai's translation that the world does not exist also accurate. So they're both right. And so Rin realizes that Nezha loves the water and the oceans, and she hates it as someone who is landlocked. And Hannah should have seen that as a very specific foreshadowing. And then Nezha's dad is still trying to recuperate, so Nezha shows her around. They meet another strategy Synegardian, Officer Sola, and she remembers Ursha fondly, and she's like, how did he die? And Katai is like, with honor, because they don't want to admit what happened.
It's like, not in a great way, but it's okay.
It's also really funny that Rin is like, should we say flayed alive? And Katai is just like, with honor. Like, no, you can't just go around telling people that, Rin. And so he also says that like Urjo would probably think that they were all traitors, and Officer Sola's like, no, he would want justice over loyalty to the Empire. And it's like, wow, these kids really don't understand how war works, do they?
Right.
Ramza is really excited to see all the weapons, and Nezha shows Rin lily pads.
He's like, oh, they're militarized. I'm gonna say militarized.
They're so big. Like, have you ever seen a lily pad
so
this
many
big?
times? She's like, they're lily pads.
No,
like, they're militarized lily pads. She's like, they're essentially pool floaties. And he's like, no, they're not.
They're so cool, Rin. Look at how big they are. You could step on them. And then we meet his older brother, Ian Jinza, the leader. As long as his father is sick, he makes some snide comments about Nezha and tries to get Rin to create fire, and she realizes she can't after her vision flares red. He's like, wow, Dad
Don't
was
forget
right.
that Jinja is also like beautiful. Like
Jinja, oh yes, he is
so beautiful that
Jinja is
almost
so
as
pretty
as Nezha.
Except Nezha has all those scratchy marks on him that make him less beautiful, but not really.
Any scarring.
It's rarely mentioned, and it's always mentioned with how pretty he still is. So, yeah.
Right.
But anyway, he says that their father is right. They should have tried to save the other one, meaning Alton, because everyone loves Alton in this book. Rin goes to see Chagan and tells him she can't make fire and he won't want her anymore, meaning Viceroy. They realize that Rin has been sealed off from the Pantheon by Daji, and Rin realizes that this is what happened to the gatekeeper. And Chagan is like, wait, the gatekeeper was sealed? Why didn't you tell me this before? And she's like, I literally didn't know what it was. Like,
she's like, I don't know who the gatekeeper is.
Yeah,
what's going on with him?
I didn't know. Like, John just had no memory of his life and seemed a little off. Like, how would I know?
Thought he was just a weird dude.
He just gave me some random vibes about no memory. I didn't know there was a seal involved. And then Chagan says that he thinks he can help her. And he like takes her before the seal to try to destroy it, but Alton is there. She can't seem to kill him like she's supposed to. And Chagan is kind of like, you can't kill him. You're so useless. But then he gets dragged in, and we see his version of like amazingness, which is him and Alton having a romantic scene on a mountainside. They get kicked out from the seal, and she's like, you are such a hypocrite. You are just as obsessed with Alton as I am. And she's like, you didn't even know how to break the seal, did you? And he's like, no, I just know that like sometimes spirits linger there. And I thought since you two were similar, like,
I thought this was like a Spearly specific thing that he mentioned.
He says that a lot of times spirits linger, especially with Spearlies.
Okay, so specifically their culture. Okay.
Yes, specifically their culture. A lot of times they linger a lot more than other people, but I do think like other people have the capability. It's just like something about Spearlies in and of themselves have like a stronger connection to this type of world,
to the Pantheon and everything.
To the Pantheon. And so he thought he could maybe find Alton there. And
bring him back.
She is like, you're a jerk. You told me you could help me. Get out of my room.
Rightly so.
Yeah. And so she's told by everyone to keep acting like she has her ability. She is like sleeping using sleeping draughts. And she also runs into Venka, whose father disowned her in that moment. And we find out that Venka had once been pregnant, and she wanted an abortion, but Nezha's mother hates them because she has like studied in Hesperia and worships the Maker, aka the Lord. And
Christian.
Yes, and Rin. It's
Christianity.
It's Christianity. It's just Christianity.
It's Christianity.
It is obviously Christianity from people in the West. I wonder who they could be. But Venka notes she had to get creative and to be allowed to obtain an abortion from when she was raped. And she now like has a deformed hand, so she can no longer use the sword, but she says she can still shoot an arrow, and she is still pretty wounded by all of this, which is understandable. And then in the next chapter, we kind of get some backgrounds that like the Southern warlords have defected from the Empire. They have 4 on their side and 8 to the Empire. And Nezha is like, actually, it's 5-7 with good generals, and Solon's going to come through for us. And there's a lot of strategy. Come for hot takes like that, guys.
That's going to be the title of the episode.
How do you type that out?
UHNNH.
I thought it was going to be a few missing girls or a couple missing girls.
A couple missing girls.
Missing girls. There's a couple. There's a lot of strategizing, and they found out that Shannon is now the head of the Imperial Navy because Jun didn't want the job because, one, he doesn't like losing or the chance of it, and two, he knew he couldn't control Shannon and didn't want to even try. They don't want Jinja as the leader of the fleet, but Viceroy is kind of like, it's my party and I'll put my son as the lead if I want to. Rin's super frustrated that they're all just kind of waiting around. And Solon does end up joining them from the Snake Province, or is he? I think he's Snake Province. There's so many provinces. Okay. Noting that they did come for his family immediately after Viceroy defected. But Viceroy was like, and you got them out, didn't you? And he's like, that's not the point. And it's like, but isn't it? And then Rin starts training with Nezha because she's relied on the fire for so long and she's no longer a good soldier. Nezha wants her to give up the trident because she's better with a sword. And she's like, but once I get the fire back, I do need to actually know how to train with this.
Right.
And he's like, well, what if you never get it back? And she's like, I would go crazy because I hate being useless. I want to be useful. The fire is like everything. And he kind of pushes back on this in a moment where I'm like, please don't let Nezha be the voice of reason. I hate that.
Don't worry.
Like, it won't last for very long.
He's never the voice of reason.
But he did note that like Alton wasn't always a great leader. He kind of spoke to people like they were objects. Right. And he does call him a shitty person and commander, which again is too far, Nezha. And she's like, you can't talk to me about Alton ever because you're a piece of shit. Right. They decide to starve out the North and refuse them crops. They had actually sold them some bad grain recently, expecting this to happen. Katai is horrified that they plan on starving people. He's like, these people are innocent. We can just set an offensive and win quickly. And General Hu and like a lot of the people are like, you're being so dramatic and overzealous over people who do not matter. And Katai is like, this is like what we trained for at Synagard. We have to end wars fast. We can't just like starve people out. This is awful. Because Katai apparently is going to be the voice of reason right now. And then Nezha tells Katai that his father won't let him have power if he acts like that. Katai points out that his father is surrounding himself by like people who are either weak or he doesn't trust the people who are strong because he thinks they will defect. And Nezha is kind of like, dude, you joined up like yesterday. You have not been around enough to earn my father's trust.
You don't have anybody's trust. You were literally just like trying to throw yourself up a boat the other day to get away from us.
And you're only here because daddy is gone. Like it just does not make sense. And so they wait for the weather to change and get colder to starve out the people in the North. Rin puts her entire faith into Viceroy because she wants some person to tell her what to do. She continues to train, and it's noted that Viceroy hasn't just been sitting around. He's actually been waiting for backup, and suddenly the Hesperians arrive, aka the white people. And boy,
the white people are here.
And they are going to make all the problems.
Surprise. They do that all the time.
I'm shocked.
Why are we always the worst?
It's, well, because of colonialism.
No, I mean, like, in real life, we're always the worst as well.
I mean, it's well earned in this book.
It's not just this book, and it's all the time.
I'm just saying, like, yeah, we're the worst because we are often the worst. So
that's what I mean too. Like, we're always the worst.
And
I'm questioning what's wrong with us. Why are we always the worst?
Apparently a lot. And so it's noted that the Hesperians don't believe in the Pantheon, but they believe in the Maker, aka Christianity. And boy, are they going to shove that down everyone's throats. And she's actually never seen a Hesperian. And again, they shove their religion down everyone's throat. So Nezha is like, you've never seen missionaries along the coast. And she's like, no, we just heard rumors about them. Like they eat babies and they do all these things.
Which is hilarious.
I know. I did like her being, I loved all of this where she like had so many things where she's
I
like,
they had like red hair that like sprung up all over their bodies. Like, no.
And she's also just like, man, they look ugly. They all look the same. Like, it's very funny.
Their eyes are strange. Why are they so pale like that? That's weird.
They're paler than like the pale people I find pretty. That's strange. It's almost like the closer you get to whiteness, the more like people value you, and that sucks.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty heinous. We get a background on the Hesperians that they became liberators after they had helped the Federation for years and years and years because genocide was just a bridge too far. Lots of war and death, totally fine, but genocide, it's giving the Community line where she's like, I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at animal cruelty. And Shirley in the background going, you could excuse racism. One of the best lines in all of existence. And so they were supposed to be kicked out. Like they ended up helping the trifecta. The trifecta were like, get out. We're going to be dictators of this country. We don't want you here. And then they have actually been at war in the Western continent for the past 2 decades. So they hadn't been around until now, which was not a bad thing, honestly.
Right.
The Hesperians exit along with Nezha's mother, and she's beautiful, Laura. She's so
Baji
pretty.
Wants to marry her.
Everyone loves all of Nezha's family. They're so
because
pretty.
they're so attractive.
And then Rin notes that the Hesperians don't look like they're real people. And then Nezha's mother points to Rin and they try to shoot her with their weapons immediately.
Yeah, she's like, attack!
She's just screaming. They knock her out and she wakes up imprisoned on a stone floor. Nezha was like, don't worry, this was just a mistake.
Don't worry.
It's just my mom wanted you dead. It's fine. It's fine. And like, you're not a prisoner. It's just, you have no choices here. You have to do exactly what we say. But like,
they just want to like study you and like violate everything about you. But
I understand you have PTSD from being like actually thrown in a laboratory against your will. But like, this is for the good of the nation. So can't you just be like poked and prodded and treated like an animal for the good of everyone else?
Totally different. Like,
we're the good guys. You're not a prisoner. You're just not allowed to leave. And then she's like, oh, but Nezha, you're so pretty. It's just like, Rin.
Oh my gosh.
Believe how people treat you. Okay.
Right.
He is not a good person. Don't. Yeah. So anyway. Yeah, and she can't leave because she will derail negotiations through, asserting her independence and her bodily autonomy.
The Hesperians came in and they want to study shamanism. They don't understand it. All they want to do basically is just poke and prod at all of the shamans and figure out what's going on with them and then peace out.
Yeah, a town. And his mother has actually been in Hesperia for years and trying to be like a diplomatic person, but she also buys into their religion. Of course she does.
Sure.
And they need their weapons called arquebuses.
They're guns.
They're guns. And I will continue to call them that because they are guns.
They're guns.
But they do call them arquebuses because of world building. He tells her to be smart because the Hesperians will totally leave after this. Like they're just going to
help us. They just want to make sure that they've got reason to help us, that they see that we're doing well, and then they'll send reinforcements for us. And but like, they just got to be sure.
They're not going to try to take over our countries because like they have other colonies that are already in revolt. And it's like, yeah, but still these people,
real. Don't trust them.
She's taken to the council rooms. The Hesperians want to wait and see if Nikata is ready for civilization. Awesome. Rin is introduced to Josephus Tarkat. And I love this because she was like, that's a dumb name. Immediately. She's just like, that's stupid. She learns that Nezha's mother made her seem like a wild animal. And his mother, Sakara, is yelling about how she should be dragged off to the Grey Tower and is an abomination. And then she said that they swore that they would make this right and quote unquote fix him. Wonder who they're talking about. And they tell her to, and then Viceroy is like, leave if you can't be quiet. And she just stomps out of the room like the wild person she is. And he says, she's just ill-tempered after traveling. This woman just threw the biggest hissy fit of all the world. And he's like, she just has a headache.
No.
A woman in gray says she's desperate for answers. She wants to meet Rin and see someone who's possessed by chaos. They pretend that they're all like, well, Rin, do you say that you can be looked at and poked and prodded? And Rin is like, I obviously don't have a choice here. And
they're like, no, you definitely have a choice, but your choice is that you're going to submit.
Because I want you to. And then she realizes that the look in the woman's eyes remind her of Dr. Shiro. And she agrees to let herself be examined for once a week for an hour. And then the woman pretty much like immediately takes Rin into her laboratory, drugs her with laudanum because she knows Rin doesn't do well in labs. Because again, this woman was tested on like a lab rat, and she's a 20-year-old person, and she shouldn't have to have all this done. And she introduces herself as Sister Petra. She says she's interested in redeeming Rin's soul.
No.
Rin is like, well, my gods are real. I've literally seen them.
I've seen them.
And Sister Petra is like, and she's like, your guys' religion is even more ridiculous than ours. You think one guy did everything, and that's so stupid. And Sister Petra is like, oh, you know nothing about our God. And it's like, you know nothing about their gods. You're just as high and mighty, woman. You're just blundering under racism. And it's noted that Sinagar did teach people about experience, but it was always like, oh God, can you believe these guys?
Where she mentioned something like, why do they believe that or whatever to Jung, and he's like, hubris.
Like, it's because they want to be lords of everyone else, and so they created a god who's exactly in their image.
Well, and then Sister Petra goes on to explain their religion in one of the most disgusting passages of this book, I feel like, where she
had a couple of them. She obviously believes in eugenics.
Yeah, it's bothersome.
Yeah. And so she whips out a clock and she's like, hey, look at the technology we have. And you guys are uncivilized.
Ugh.
So because we're smarter than you, our God is right. And Rin is like, okay, so if God created this world and technology and gave it to you guys, like, why do bad things happen? And she's like, that's a great question. It was someone else. Our God is not like fully in control of everything. So chaos, the root of all evil, flows through everyone, including you. And now I must save your soul and stop you from using firepower. And I need to do that through studying you like a lab rat. And Rin is a threat to the natural order, but they can't just kill her because then they wouldn't understand chaos is evil. And this one is the worst. So anyway, Rin has to go back to her barracks as the laudanum wears off. She starts vomiting. She's shaking. And she notes that like with the laudanum, she was able to kind of have a little bit of removal from being touched and poked and prodded. But that trauma doesn't just stop because you couldn't like process it in the moment. And so now she's having flashbacks to Shiro's lab. She feels incredibly violated and she starts crying. And when all of her comrades ask her what happened, she cannot tell them.
Right.
We get to the next chapter with a sudden shift and all the fishies are dying. And they realize that someone's been poisoning the water. And Rin finds Aracha dying.
This was so sad.
I know he's dying in his human form, which is like an emaciated man covered in barnacles. I kind of
because she like comes up on him and she's like, Aracha, like, is that who this is? Like, because she's never seen him in human form.
Yeah, and I assume he looks like one of those pirates from Pirates of the Caribbean with like the barnacles from number 2. And he like is confusing her for Alton as he dies. And he says, I should have told you, but he can't say what it does. And he disintegrates into sand shells in a pearl necklace. They note that the poison affected all of the aquatic life, but doesn't seem to be killing the men or making them sick. So this poison is coming from far downstream, but it's a little bit more diluted for actual human consumption. And it can't have come from the Autumn Palace and maybe the Hair Province, although they say that the Hair Province is pathetic and will do whatever Dashi tells them to. Jinja notes he wanted them to sail up a week ago, and Viceroy notes that they don't have the troops from Hesperia on their side yet, and they really need them. Solon notes their blockade is now neutralized, and they can't wait anymore because they're losing just as much food resources as everyone else now. And this poison is traveling into the irrigation and canals most likely, and without the fish, they will start bleeding allies for food, so they need to figure out what's happening. Nezha and Rin go out on the first fleet, but they're on different ships. Tarkat goes with the skeleton platoon, with the rest staying in Arlong because the Hesperians don't actually want to participate. They just want to observe.
They're just watching.
They're just watching to prove like you uncivilized nation are good enough.
We're just taking notes and seeing if you guys are gonna be worth getting involved with and sending our troops to. And like, you liars, you're not getting involved at all.
And I imagine they're talking with that specific accent.
I mean, that's how I hear them.
We're just observing. I am
just watching.
Target's, Sister Petra over there. The sister is on a different ship, so Rin doesn't have to be observed, but they're like, don't worry, it's coming soon. Venka tries to join the ship and Nezha won't let her. Thinking of her as a harmed little sister and useless for battle, even though she has use.
You can't do it, Venka. It's okay. I'm trying to protect you. Like, shut up, Nezha.
I'm doing it for your own good, by not respecting your wishes and thinking I know best and being the worst. Yeah, we saw that, Nezha, and we get it. Anyway, so Katai is on board with Rin. And they seem almost friendly again. He's like, well, I like you more than Nezha. And it's like, me too, Rin. It's not that hard. Nezha's the worst.
He's terrible.
Yeah. And they're led by him downstream. They sail upstream because they were downstream because that's how the fishies got the poison. They sail upstream with Captain Sulky. They find something in the water and realize it's a pig bladder and someone's been sticking the poison in it. And it is resistant to acid until it gets downriver. And then they go to a place where there's a limited number of people working there. And it's very funny because Katai just kind of seems over it. He's like, we're going to go inside. And Rin is like, there might be a lot of people there. And Katai is like, explosion. Look, there's not that many people. Let's go inside.
Right.
And so they walk in and they find this like factory with all of these like bins of stuff that Rin recognizes from the Federation. And they run into Nyang, who is one of the only female characters we knew in the last book.
Right.
We didn't talk about because we were like, well, she's not purposeful in this.
She's not that important. Well, she's here for a couple paragraphs.
She's here for a couple of paragraphs and she looks like another soldier after she had like looked like such a young and innocent person. And she hates Rin now. And she says that Rin killed many prisoners who were on the island with the Federation, who had been prisoners of war, including her family.
Rin's like, what? No, there weren't any people there. And she's like, how would you know? Did you give them a chance to get out? And she's like, And
then she looks at Katai and Katai is just like, obviously you were guilty of this. And you just literally did not ask any questions, Rin. And she feels guilty for about half a second. And then Young is like, I was the one who made the pig splatters. Isn't it so smart? I'm very smart. And they stole
because they're permeable.
And they stole all of the like poison from the Federation labs. And Rin starts trying to reason with her. And Katai is just like, nope, and kills her.
Yep.
They burn everything. Katai has a breakdown when he says he can't keep doing this. He keeps reliving.
Before this, though, she's like, you used to like Nyan. And he's like, no. And she's like, yes, you did. You said she was cute. And then he has a breakdown, doesn't he?
And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I keep reliving Golan niece. I don't feel like myself. This wasn't who I am. And then he asks Rin if she knows what happened on the island and if it was her choice. And she's like, I don't remember. And it's like, Rin. And she's like, I was just desperate for everything to end. They get back to Jinja and he murders 2 people they have brought with them for interrogation in front of everyone in a very graphic and public way. And Nezha says that it wasn't necessary. And Katai was like, don't be naive. The Republic took a massive blow and Viceroy can only make people pay and show the public what, like, that things could be all right if they listen to him. But like, we have to take this by force. Because Nezha in this, like, this is my biggest critique of these books is sometimes the characters, it's like, really, are you this dumb? Right. And they're a little bit inconsistent with like when Katai is being naive versus when Nezha is being naive, which versus when Rin is being naive. But right now it's Nezha's turn. So he's like, Nezha's like, well, we didn't think about this when we were learning in class. And Katai is like, dude, we're going to be fighting friends and family. That's what a civil war is. Like, how are you this stupid? And but like Nezha's like, well, maybe we can reason with people. And Katai is like, no, they made their choices and we made ours. So like, this is the bed we're lying in now. The site get reassigned to a warship for optimal damage. That means that the Hesperians and the Grey Company have access to Rin again. And Nezha is like, yeah, that was intentional. They just want to look at you. Jinja tells Rin that she is his soldier and she will act like it or she will be punished as a deserter. Rin notes Jinja is an asshole. They set out to pick off kind of the low-hanging fruit. They have like a ton of like battles. In small towns with winds on the river. Jinja strategically attacks people before they can surrender to show some fear. Then they let quote unquote innocent people vote to join the Republic, even though they know that if people vote against the Republic, they will be killed. And Nezha does not
they have the choice.
Yeah, and Nezha keeps being like, well, they have a choice. And it's like
their choice is join or die. Like,
yeah, like that's not a choice.
Not a choice.
You're an idiot. How are you this stupid? Like, you're not getting it. You're not giving anyone a choice. You're just giving them the like fakeness of a choice. Right. So they that's happening. They talk about the Hesperians and how they smell because they drink cow's milk. Someone's like,
her paragraph on how they smell so bad just cracks me up.
And then someone's like, how big do you think their penises are? I heard they were bigger than ours. And Rena's like, ew.
Katai says that.
Yeah. And then they're like also trying to be missionaries to people on the beach, and Rin is just kind of over them. It's noted that the Red Emperor did try to kick them out, but they like keep coming back as missionaries because they really think they're doing the maker's work. And Katai knows that their divine maker says that they need to preach his word. And Sister Petra continues to look in on Rin. She's upset that Rin isn't showing her the fire and thinks she's hiding it. And she's being incredibly racist during all their interactions. And Rin also meets Brother August during this time, a boy who thinks her language is beautiful. He's trying to feed people, and Rin is like, hey, Jinja says you cannot feed people. They have to starve for the night so that, they vote for us. And Sister Petra is like, respect what they're saying, young child. And Sister Petra, again, just horrible racism spewing all over this page, which has, I feel like we need to say this, it has historical context, which is why Laura.
Oh, this is all based.
This is all based in history.
Things that have happened.
Laura and I are bagging on it really hard. We do recognize we are 2 white women who benefited from this system, but
still sucks.
It still sucks to see it on the page. She did a great job at being honest and taking a good hard look at white people. I feel like we can
still enjoy this book while being able to criticize what white people have done.
Yes. And that is something we definitely criticize. And I don't think I think it would be easy to be like, oh my gosh, can you believe the racism in this book, when it's like, no, this actually happened.
No, we can definitely believe it.
That's important for us to also note that this is based in history and very factual, and it sucks because it's true. And so anyway, Sister Petra tells Rin that it's their duty to bring the Maker to chaos-ridden lands. She gives Rin Laudeman, and she discusses how they tried to get them to stop learning the languages of the Nikarans back in Hesperia, but Sister Petra felt the calling to keep doing this because Nikarans are less than, and they're lesser people, and she knew one day they could try to civilize them, and she wasn't going to give up on them like the other Hesperians. So isn't she wonderful?
No.
Rin points out that she thinks that they're stupid, and Petra notes how upset like how small Rin's people are because they have war and infighting. And then Rin is like, didn't your country just go through the same exact thing?
Exactly.
And then Petra comes back with the almighty, well, we were just fighting the forces of chaos. Yours is different. Ours were Crusaders battles, so they were worth it. Yours are just silly little humans deigning to fight each other with infighting. Vomit.
Puke.
They also know during this time that like Vicer keeps flying his flag in all the locations that they win, and they're like, the Republic does not have a flag. That's a red flag, guys. And they move quickly until a storm hits. They talk about the North offering sacrifices to the wind, and someone is like, why didn't they offer it to the ocean? And they're like, because the oceans don't create storms, the wind does. Foreshadowing. They note that once the wind god took down something, I can't read what I wrote here in the tale, but the wind god turned. Oh, that once like a magician called down the wind god to take on a fleet, and the wind god did that and then turned on the magician and ruined his entire village. And then Rin goes to bed thinking she hears laughter in the wind, but she's like, it's just a storm. It's just a storm. Just like Hannah when she thinks she hears a ghost.
Just a storm, Hannah. Just a storm.
There, I do have like neighbors downstairs, and they like walk around a lot at night. And I'm always like, if it were a ghost, I would just tell myself it was my neighbors. I would sit in that delusion to get myself to sleep. She goes to see the psych. It's noted she is hiding that they are all shamans from the Hesperians, so she's the only one being studied. Good on Rin, one of the few things she does right in this part. Right. And they ask about the Grey Company, and she notes a lot of like what's happening to her is religious lecturing, and that she kind of buys it. And it's like, Rin.
Rin. Sometimes though, like the way that she says it, she's like, I buy it, and then other times she's like, I don't know, maybe there is something to it. And then she's at other times she's like, no, there's like no way.
This is a very traumatized young girl who wants to find something to hold on to give her validation and hope.
Mostly she holds on to people.
Yes. She mostly holds on to people because they
but
give her
she's
the
willing to try
validation.
Religions if it's gonna work.
She just
I think more of it is she sees what it does for these missionaries and the people that are on this ship, and she's like, wow, they're so convinced of this, maybe there's something to it, and she's kind of
that's my biggest thing is like,
maybe
I do think that like there is some good undertones of like, if religion is beneficial to you,
sure,
in some way, shape, or form, then it's not actively harming someone else,
right? A
very important note. Cannot harm someone else. But if it's only making you a better and stronger person and giving you something to live for, then it is okay. And I do think that Rin is playing around with that to say like, well, some of this religion does have its benefits, but it's like, yes, but in this,
but the way that they're using it
is not good. And the way Sister Petra is talking to you, you should not buy into any of this. But like, she kind of points out like they have all this good technology, maybe they are smart. And Shagan comes in, and Kara's like, hey, does it ever like do they ever hurt you? And she's like, no. And Shagan is the biggest dick in this moment, and he's just mad that they all seem to be having fun or like any type of levity, including Rin especially. And he leaves, and Baji is like, what happened between you and him? And she's like, nothing. And they're like, is it about Alton? And she's like, how do you guys...
it's always about Alton.
Yeah, Ramzan is like, it's always about Alton with Shagan. Like, how did you not know this? And it's like, how did Rin not realize? Everyone else was just like, well, those two.
Right.
But the storm passes. They go to the Ram Warlord, where Katai thinks they will hit their first challenge. They discuss the strategy because there's like a huge wall keeping them out. Bryn asks about a strategy where, like, based on a tale that Jinja does not recognize because he was in a different class, Synagard, and it talks about how it was like one general who lost to another, and then the losing general bided his time until he was set free, and then immediately killed the other general. And it's all about like making yourself look a little bit ridiculous for the benefits on the other side. They want Jinja to call in the Ram Warlord, pretend to consider peace, and then get him to like believe everything's going to be okay, and then they will smuggle people into the city on a skimmer or boat, and they will take the city from inside. And they all send Katai because he's going to be a really, really bad negotiator.
Yeah, he's like, I get to go because I'm good, right? And they're like, no, you get to go because you're terrible.
And he's not going to buy anything from you, and we want that to happen. So he kind of like goes with Rin and all of them. And the warlord comes and he's like, Pfizer just wants power. You guys are all idiotic. Like, this isn't going to change anything. And then he like kicks them out. He's like, get out of my sight, pretty much. And then the secret fleet gets inside, but they aren't using their calling card to get them in there. Jinja decides he's ready to strike, and Rin gets inside the wall with a shit bomb. The Deus Machina.
She's like, is this one of Ramsa's poop bombs?
Well,
like,
she's like, Ramsa, I need an explosive. And he hands it to her, and she's like, a poop bomb? And he's like, yeah, it's all I have left. And the Deus Machina of these poop bombs popping up all
I
the time.
love it.
It's like we lost Aracha, the water maker. So we have
now we have to have poop bombs constantly.
She gets over the wall and she finds her men fighting, and they're like, finally, we sent up the flare like 10 minutes ago. It's just no one saw it. They keep fighting, and suddenly there are Federation soldiers who had obviously infiltrated that town. Rin is horrified, and
she's like, oh wait, those are not the right blue.
That's not the right blue. That's Federation blue. How dare this Ram Warlord let them come in here and protect them? And so she decides she's going to take him down. She goes in and picks up his only male child.
Well, she finds like that she and Baji are together, right? They like go up into the top floor of this place where he's supposedly at, and they end up finding this room full of women and then his only son.
Yes. And she takes the only son and kind of like goes throughout the like palace screaming for him, being like, where are you? I have your kid. I will murder him. Right. And he comes out and he's like, you don't understand. We had to let them in. It was that or death. And she's like, okay, you could have died. And she has no sympathy for him because he is hiding Federation soldiers. And so they end up winning. Jinja is very excited. He wants to keep some of the men for hard labor on board, and Rin wants all the Federation soldiers to die.
She's like, why would we keep them? And he's like, well, they could do all the labor. And she's like, we'd have to feed them. And he's like, well, we'll just kind of cut everybody back. She's like, you'd cut our own people back to keep them around. And then we find out a little later, maybe it was a smart idea to have kept them, but
I mean, Rin doesn't have the most forethought. But
also I feel like her trauma guides her decisions on a lot of things as well. Yes. So you can see her point of view too, where it's like, yeah, I wouldn't want anything to do with this.
It's an interesting thing, because I think like it's one of those things where it's like, Rin, you pretty much destroyed this entire army. Like anyone left over is not in power. They're just being like quartered there, or like they have some form of control, but not really. And she's like, no, murder them all. And it's like, they're slaves at this point. Like they're not. Right. So, and it's also not coming from a, like, we should put them out of their misery and not turn people into slaves. It's like, no. I want them to die. I want to watch them all die. And so it's an interesting take. And so Jinja is like, put a muzzle on your spirally, Nezha. And she's like, I am not a dog. And then she tries to beat up Jinja, and an admiral stops her and he kicks her out. So then she goes to get drunk, And Nezha comes upon her as she's peeing in a jug to give to Jinja. And he's like, you can't lash out like this, or people are thinking you're going to go mad. And then Jinja demotes her to foot soldier, and kind of puts her over with Nezha. And so she is incredibly angered by this. She like says she could leave, and he's like, no, you can't, because you agreed to be a soldier. And she's like, what's going to happen in that town? And he's like, they're going to get a vote just like everyone else did. And she kind of like starts spouting off at the hip, being like, maybe they don't deserve a vote. People can't be trusted. Your father should be put into rule, because like, this is ridiculous. People who are too stupid to fight back shouldn't get any power. And Nezha tells her a story about how Nua created people to keep her company. The first were incredibly detailed, and these are the aristocrats, the emperor's warriors. And then she got lazy and started flinging mud, which were the rest of the people. And Hannah's like, they don't tell that story in the South. And Nezha is like, why do you think that is?
Right.
And then he says he doesn't see her people as mud. I would like to see proof of that, because he sure falls back on his racist tendencies as soon as conflict happens. And he thinks the Republic will be good for them, because then they could help them become who they are meant to be, which is very colonialist of him. It's almost like the Hesperians who are spouting off about how uncivilized
are rubbing off.
Yep. Awesome. And Bryn notes that that's not how it works. And the North won't let them, because they see people as mud. And so they're going to make sure that those people stay mud. And he does not get that. So anyway, she tells the psych that they're disbanding, and they're furious. Ramza is like, did you even fight for us? And she is like, nope.
She's like, I just can't do it anymore.
And then so they push them all away from each other. And then we found out that Rin is thriving as a soldier, because she's like, oh, good, zero responsibility, and I just get to murder people. Awesome.
Which is sad in itself, that it's like that point where it's like she is just so relieved to not have to have other people be her responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. And she thinks that the psych are better without her. And I'm like, Rin, come on, girl. You have heard from Shagan and Alton why it's so important for the psych to stay together, and you cannot accept it.
Community, come on.
It's almost like you always fight about how selfish people are, but you are also inherently selfish. I do know that some people have a lot of faults with this book. I will say at this juncture, like, I really like this book still, because it is showing a very flawed 20-year-old girl. And I always know she's 20 in this book.
Sure.
So I can feel her
this
trauma.
Is the book that I think a lot of people don't like out of the trilogy. It seems like they love the first one, and then the second and third one they start to get lost on, where they're just like, nah, I'm kind of losing it. But I really like this one.
I really like it.
I find it inherently interesting.
It is very interesting. I do think that sometimes she's trying to put too much in the novel, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And I also think that like a lot of novels are guilty of that. And I sometimes think this particular type of novel gets a lot of hate. That's unreasonable.
Maybe this one just works for me. Maybe the writing just works for me in a way that other books don't.
Right. I really like this novel as well. I think it has good themes. I think it's interesting. And I think like for me, like people point out some of the messiness of the plot. And I think every time it happens, it makes sense. Like this feels like a bunch of idiots running a war. And that's what war is. So I guess I don't feel that criticism. You don't feel what? Sorry.
I just don't feel that, it's messy, but that's maybe just me.
I get that. No, I think some people say that like with the characters, they kind of feel all over the place and the pacing seems off, and it seems like lack of communication, but it's like, I think it all fits, but I think it fits. I think it makes sense in context of this novel.
Yeah.
I
even think some of the back and forth with some of the characters where at times I'm like, what, you're acting like that now? And then I think, you know what, that maybe makes sense in this situation, but
I think I critique it, but I also agree with you. Like I pointed out because I recognize it happening, but I don't think that that's a fault. I think that that is a strength of the novel, because it's showing like this book feels human in a way that a lot of books don't, because they want characters to have like an overarching theme to them and like character growth in a certain way. And this book, it's like, no, sometimes people don't grow. Like, or sometimes people are hypocrites. So that's kind of my 2 cents. We can talk about that in later episodes.
Sure.
And so again, Rin keeps seeing Sister Petra. She spouts some truly heinous shit to Rin. And she still like critiques Rin over not being able to make fire. Rin literally has to urinate in front of this woman and takes measurements and believes in a lot of eugenics. And Rin is finally like at the end of her rope and she's like, you actually don't know what you're doing. You don't know what chaos means. You're just guessing. And Sister Petra gets angry at her because Rin is right. And she's like, well, you don't have a choice in this. You don't know where you stand. And then the sister gives Rin opium to tempt her, saying that her people need it. And they were born of the smoke. Again, the Spearleys did not use opium until it was introduced in their society by other people trying to colonize them. So that has its stakes in history. Look it up. But what the sister is saying is just heinous. It's gross. Rin is horrified afterwards by like everything that Petra did to her. And August comes and he tells her about how Sister Petra is old fashioned and doesn't really respect Nakata. And she thinks that you have to convert people over to act just like Hesperia and you can't have any respect for a place's history or people. And then Rin goes back to her apartment. We know now that she's kept the opium because the sister pretty much let her. And she puts it in her floorboard saying she doesn't want to use it, but she likes knowing that it's there and she's making an active decision not to use. There is a skirmish with the Hesperians where some of the prisoners on board try to take hostages, but they're killed by Tarket's people. And Jinja is like, you killed good labor. And Tarket is like, do not talk to me, boy. I'm in control here. And Jinja has no choice but to suck it up.
Yep.
And accept that hatred. They come to the end of their power when they run into the Rat province and they are held up with winter kind of hitting, and Katai wants to turn back before winter really settles in, because if they proceed, it's going to be a lot of slow moving. They're going to have to pull the boats forward. They will not have as much access to the river waterways and everything. And Jinja is like, I don't want to take that time. And like, it's a huge mistake. But anyway, they like have to find, they're killing people along the way. They're making slow movements, and they're struggling through the winter. Rin celebrates the new year with Katai and Nezha, and they learn about her adoptive brother and things like she can cook. Because again, Nezha doesn't know much about Rin. He knows.
Well, because they're just like, you have a brother? Like, and she's like,
well, he was an adopted brother. And they were like, what? And then they're like, oh, wait. You were like a displaced orphan? And it's like, wow, these boys just
it's like you never asked a single question about her.
I just love how little people know about each other. Nezha and Rin are kind of talking with Katai, and Nezha is like, hey, did you know cauldrons were like built by the war? Isn't that fascinating? Like, and she's like, oh, so you're saying we need war for progress? And he's like, no, but it's a nice side effect, which is actually a true thing about war.
Sadly true.
Yeah, I know. And then Katai is like, what do you think the next great thing is? And Nezha's like, guns. And Rin is like, shamans. And Nezha is like, you think that shamans will be better than guns? They don't have control and they go insane, Rin. Like, come on. And she's like, well, the historical texts say that they existed and they were able to like troll things. And Nezha is like, no. And then they all wish each other happiness. And Rin goes to take a pee. And she's like, I would do it in front of Katai, but not Nezha. He's here. And then she finds a child dead in the snow. They realize that the children and families were fleeing from the Republic's ships, and Nezha is like, why would they do that? We're giving people the vote and we're like letting them go. We're not actually animals. And Katai is like, their warlords are probably telling them like, we're coming, we're killing people. Like, that's how war works. Right. Like, are you an idiot? And Nezha is like, no, they're wrong. They just need to do this like peacefully. Like, if people would just do exactly what we wanted, we wouldn't have to become violent. Like, that's what
the whole like mindset of Nezha is just so unaware.
I mean, he's just drank the Kool-Aid. He's just been raised to like think they're inherently better. And like, there's a reason for this. And we can't help it.
Right.
And Rin kind of is like, is this all worth it? I'm not sure. And Katai's like, I wouldn't think too hard about those stakes, people. Like, this is not a time to ask questions. They start moving forward through slow waters. Katai is so angered because Jinja is a Navy person, and that's why he's been so successful, and he's not recognizing his limitations. They go down river, and they're suddenly stopped by explosives, like of lanterns hanging in the like up a ridge, and they can't go down that way, so they have to go down the river a different way. And they realize that there are booby traps and explosions in the water, and Nezha's ship is about to be hit with explosive when suddenly water shoots out, and Rin looks over, and Nezha's eyes are shining blue, showing that he is the one controlling the water. And then he collapses.
Is
the other half to her coin, as Laura said.
They are two halves of the same coin.
Fire and water.
Of course they're fire and water.
And you know what happens when you put fire and water together? It gets a bit
Steam.
steamy. Ew. Oh God, I hate this character so much. Rin runs to his ship and unfortunately saves him by getting opium into his system, by shoving it down his throat. And later, and he's like screaming on deck because he's fighting with a god, and he is not prepared to do this because he has not learned how to do it, because he's just trying to pretend that he's not a shaman because he's self-hatred.
Pretending like it's not there.
Yeah. And so she has to shove opium into his mouth. The doctor's like, you could have killed him. And she's like, yeah, but I figured you could have dealt with it. And the doctor was like, well, you were right, so I'm not going to get too bad. And he says, how do you know about his sickness? He started getting seizures at age 12, and we just douse him with a little bit of opium, and then he's fine. And it's like, really? How did not more people talk about shamanism?
How did nobody know about this?
How is there not more foreshadowing in earlier books other than like he healed really fast? Like we knew, but like there didn't seem to be like a control of water.
Well, in the first book, there's like no knowledge of this at all. Like,
right.
Okay, how did we know that it was like the water thing is not mentioned at all until this book?
I mean, it's told that like, well, he was one with the Dragon Emperor, like he's one of his progeny. So like, wouldn't you have some kind of shamanism? And Rin's like, I'm not worried about that until I'm worried about it. And then she sleeps by his side and talks about how pretty he is. And then he wakes up and he's like, I don't want to talk about it. And they burn.
I'm not a shaman.
They burn all the bodies that they find. And Rin learns that the maker makes what is essentially had been from August, where there's no chaos and it's perfect. And she's like, wow, must be really nice to believe in that. And then she keeps running into Nezha, and he's like, I don't want this, I'm not a shaman. And then when she keeps asking about it, he hits her. He gets physically violent with her. This love interest. Oh my God.
I can't stand him.
And then they figure out what's in the water making the explosive. It's cow intestines. And so they send people into the water to look for them who can swim, who are prisoners of war. And then Rin is like, hey, we need to turn back. This is bad. They're leading us literally to the Imperial army. And Jinja won't let up. He hits Nezha for agreeing with Rin. And she compares Jinja to Alton with how much of a one-track mind he is and how he's making stupid mistakes. And Nezha, again, brings out his racism at the first indication of them disagreeing with each other. And he says, well, we aren't spiritually trash.
Nezha, why?
And then Katai is like, hey, Rin, watch your tone. So then she gets tone policed. And he's like, you're better than this. And if you want a seat at the table, you can't just keep fighting with Jinja. And like you're a spiritually trained person. You're better than a soldier. I hated this section. And then they run into Shannon because they were headed straight for the Imperial Army, Navy. And he's like, everything's done now. You guys are going to die pretty much. He does not accept any like of their fake negotiations. And then he hits Jinja's cheek with an arrow. They go into battle. They're battling it out. Shannon is very scary. And then all of a sudden, Phelan comes into the mix to bring the wind god. And
who would have thought?
Who would have thought? We just heard him laughing a couple chapters ago. I cannot believe it. And then Rin is like,
Shocker.
maybe I could do what all could do. Hey, you might still be good, Phelan. And he's like,
And
no.
he's like, whoosh.
And then
Kill
he
a bunch of people.
shoves them over the waterfall. And then Rin goes over. She dreams of Alton, who like goes to kiss her, and then he's like, "It should have been you." And then she wakes up and she sees Kara above her, and she just screams in her face. And Kara's like, "I am not that ugly. Come on." And they are there with a bunch of Hesperians, Katai, and Shagan. The Hesperians are threatening them with guns, but August is there, so she feels bad for him, and she stops him. Shagan calls her a dog for Viceroy, and she's like, "I'm not a dog." And he's like, "Yes, you are. You followed around Alton, you follow around Viceroy, and you follow around everyone." And she's like, "You were just obsessed with Alton. You're a hypocrite." And he's like, "But I gave up when like he did Chulu Karik and you didn't, so it's your fault." And she's like, "It's my fault, but it's not his fault." And like the way he just blames her so he doesn't have to blame his boyfriend is maddening. And he just blames her for all of Alton's bad actions. Then the writers come up and they find out that it is the Hinterlanders, and we meet Shagan's cousin Vector, and these particular group of people can communicate into people's minds, and it feels freaky. The Catraids, yes. Thank you, because I had written down Shagan's group of people, but I had missed the Catraids. And they kind of come in and they were like, "Hey, we were hunting the wind god. We heard you guys let them out. How dare you?" And you find out that like Shagan and Kara were actually sent to watch over the psych group to kind of use them as an experiment. And he was meant to kind of control Alton, and like Vector mocks him for loving Alton so much and writing in letters like, "I could save him." And it's like every childhood girl with a crush on a bad boy. And Shagan's like, "You guys are way too far south. What are you guys doing down here?" And they're like, "Well, the Naimads are weak and we're taking over, and our like peace treaty is no longer valid. We had to come in and stop this. You guys are out of control." And then we meet Sokinsira. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I think so.
Okay, Sokinsira has come down to stop all of them, and Ring kind of finds out that they kill people who can commune with the gods because they do not trust them. And then Sorkin says that Rin looks like Henelai, and Rin is like, "I don't know who that is or what you're talking about." And so Kinsira's like, "Come on, where did you come from?" And Rin is like, "I have no idea. Leave me alone." And Shagan's like, "Yeah, she's telling the truth. Like, she has no idea. She didn't even know she was a Spearly until last year." And so Sorkinsir kind of says that they are going to stop the psych and this experiment is over, meaning like the psych are not long for this world. And Ren is like, "You can't just do that." And Sorkinsir is like, "Really? Like, we have every right to." And she's like, "No, you don't." And she's like, "Well, watch me." And then she gives Rin a vision of the trifecta, and we find out that Zhang had learned all of his skills from the Katarids and the Naimads, and then they kind of took what they learned and decided to kind of go against them. And in this like battle with the trifecta, they're like, "Zhang, you haven't learned enough. We have so much more to teach you." And he's like, "I think I've learned enough. I think you guys don't use your powers to the full extent. And I think you guys want me to have mindfulness, and I don't want that." And it's like, who is he? Rin a book ago?
Right?
Yeah. He obviously learned, and he was pretty hard on Rin, considering that that was him in another life, but he had no memory, so it wasn't his fault. And so then like they're like, "Please don't do this to us." Like Severai, who is Shagan's mother, is like, "Please don't do this, Young. Like, you need to turn back from this. We still could teach you." And they note that the trifecta are bound now, foreshadowing. And they're like, "We can feel it off of you." And then the trifecta kill Sorkin Sira's daughter. And Zhang is like, "You guys do not use your powers," and they are not doing great. And so then we find out that they say that they gave Nikara the keys to heaven, and they stole the people's land, and they murdered Sorkinsira's daughter. And Rin can't believe this. She's like, I knew him. He was a different person than this. How could that be? And she realizes that like he couldn't have known the seal had broken his memories. Yes. Like he had been sealed off from the Pantheon for so long that all of his memories were just gone. And she realizes that that's probably been happening to her. And Rin stops them from like killing her by saying like, we have the same enemy. Dashi wants me dead, but like I could possibly go up against her. And Sorkinseer realizes that she sealed Rin off, and she's like, oh my gosh, she's afraid of you. That's why she did this. And like, we're going to fix you because of that. And so they put her into the Catraids like build a sweat tent pretty much.
Yeah, it's basically like a big sweat lodge.
Yeah. And they're like, don't worry, we're going to make you go through this and the seal will be broken. And Rin is like, I don't know if I want to do this. And they're like, well, no choice really. Have fun. They say that she won't feel pain, but the Viperess will make her suffer through fulfilling all of her wishes and making her wish that she could stop from this world, and like kind of she will tempt her almost like the snake in Adam and Eve. So she kind of goes into a viewing as she's trying to like fight against the seal, where she sees Alton in this. He is her brother, but she is getting married to someone off screen. You get one guess who.
Unfortunately, I think we know who.
I think you know. And sorry, I think about the scene from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend where she has like the dream about the cat coming in and she's like singing to her, and she wakes up and she goes, what was that about? And the cat comes back in and she goes, I think you know. And she wakes up and she goes, oh, I'm horny. I think you know. And I think about that as a gif in my head at all times. But anyway, Alton is like, are you scared to get married? And Rams is like, oh, you're just jealous, Alton. Leave her be. Do you want to be a runaway bride? I'll help you. And then she realizes that this is all false, that this is just the poison, that everything is gone and she can't have this. And Alton is like, you could have it. All you have to do is say yes. And he's like, or you could die. Would that be so bad? You could be relieved from this world. And Rin is kind of like, nope, I don't want this to be my end. I want to fight you. And like, she wants it to end, but Sorkinseer is like, nope, the sweat only amplifies it. We need to bring you to a boil. We need to get the venom out of you. And so Rin is scared. Alton is fighting against her, trying to say she should kill herself. And she keeps remembering how everyone says that they should have saved Alton and her, not her. And she's like, well, I'm finally done taking orders from you. And it's like, good job, finally. And she said that Alton can say anything he wants to, but it's nothing that she hasn't said about herself before. And she ends up killing him once again. And she says she didn't owe him anything anymore. And he tells her that he loved her. And she says she doesn't believe that. And so then she wakes up. They got the venom out of her, but the seal remains intact. I don't know.
Of course. Of course it does.
And Rin is like, I don't want him to be gone. But she's like, oh, he'll never leave you. He lives in your heart. And then they're like, hey, by the way, Rin, you still can't reach the Phoenix because of the seal, but we could bond you to someone and he'll be like pretty much like a light, just like pulling the beacon through him. And so you can use it. And by the way, if you do that, you'll never go insane because you're no longer like trying to speak to the Phoenix. It's like two of you fighting against him. And guess what? We have a close friend of yours sitting right here. So why don't we use him?
Thing we've got him here.
And Kataya's like, I want to do it. And Rin is like, no, you don't. You don't understand. You might go crazy. And Kataya's like, just let me help you. We're solgers. I need to do this. The way that
Kataya is so eager for this, though, is a little like, to me.
It's like, Kataya, 400 pages ago, you weren't letting her have your address.
You always question everything, and now you're just like, ooh, okay, I'll do it.
You want access
like,
to my soul? I trust you. And it's like, that seems like a mistake. Like, you didn't know she had an adoptive brother 50 pages ago. Like, you do not know enough about each other. This is a Vegas wedding at most. And so she's upset about it. Shagan is like, don't worry, it's not that bad. You guys will be two halves of the same soul. You'll just feel all each other's feelings. We're getting back to Wheel of Time bonding here, where it's like, what are the logistics? What if one of them masturbates? Are they gonna feel that? These are questions you just have. Do Kara and Shagan know when the other one is having sex? They're twins. They don't want to know that. Like, I don't like when it's like, hey, by the way, you guys will feel exactly what the other one feels. It's like, what does that mean? I need boundaries. Anyway, sorry.
It was a justified rant.
You and I have just read a lot about bonding.
Yeah. I feel like too many fantasy authors are like buying into this whole bonding thing. And it's like, no, let people be their own person.
It happens in a book I read one where like there's actually ramifications to it where it's like, how dare you do this to me? Like, I feel what you're feeling. Isn't this awful? You have assigned me to know every single hurt you have. And it's like, yeah, that's actually how it would work. I don't want to be bonded to like my best friend. No offense, Laura. I think we should have our own independent feelings. And so anyway, they make them get high before they do that. Shagan makes I drink horse pee.
Then he's like, what was the point of this? And he's like, I just wanted to see if you do it.
Then you did. And so then they do the ritual. It is painful. It is scary. Oh, and and during this time, she asked Kara what it felt like. And Kara's like, I don't know. We've always been this way. We've been like linked to each other since we were 10 days old.
Like little babies.
Yeah. But then you find out that they have to murder a deer. And I was like, how did they do that with babies?
I'm assuming somebody else did it.
But you have to like hold their hands with like a baby.
I guess so. Set them on top of it.
I don't know the logistics of these 10-day-old babies. I just don't understand.
Just, like lay the baby on top of it.
It's just like two babies. They're sitting on top of a screaming deer. Like they talk about how the deer is screaming as it dies,
which is odd to me. Like,
I don't know. But anyway, Rin sees the deer's life leave its body as it's screaming on the ground, and all I'm picturing is babies with people holding knives to it.
Which it might not have to be a deer. It's just a sacrifice, right?
Yeah, but like, what did they sacrifice then?
It could have been something else. I mean, it could have been some kind of other animal.
A chicken?
Like, or maybe it was a human. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe somebody sacrificed themselves.
Sacrifice. She's going to sacrifice himself. And so anyway, they do the ritual and she realizes that Katai has feelings too.
That was like the dumbest thing where she was like, oh my gosh, she's actually going through a lot. Like,
oh, he was a victim of war as well and lost his father and his family.
Wow.
And
I guess I never really thought that maybe he would be upset.
It never occurred to me that Katai had anger in him as he murdered one of our old friends. That's weird. And so then she is able to control the phoenix. She feels it. She's laughing and she realizes she's about to kill Katai. And he
grabs her too much power.
And he asks her to please stop. And she is finally able to do it. And he's like, oh man, this is so powerful. I feel like I'm living in a dream. This is so weird. Now I have physical proof of your gods. And she's like, yeah, isn't it weird? Welcome to my world.
She's like, I told you about it. You could have just believed me.
And the phoenix is mad at her because it no longer has full control over her. And she's like, ooh, I tamed a god now. And it's like, well, Katai tamed a god, but you murdered a deer. So I guess.
Yeah.
And then
you contributed.
And he, like, Katai can feel the flames through her. He's so excited about it. And that night, the Catraids are feasting on bone broth. And Kara tells them to drink a lot of water. They're dehydrated. And this is where she talks about like Kara and how long they have been close, and it's like, well, nothing bad can happen in the next sentence then.
Like, how do you guys get separated? We'll find out.
You'll find out. You either do it willingly or you both die together. We didn't tell you that information before you did this. Oh God. And so they talk about like all the wind coming in and all the yurts, and she's uncomfortable in the yurt with the three of them because she's like, I don't like you people. And all that stuff is happening. So and then they are headed out. They said that Sorkinsira is going to let Katai and Rin leave because they will hopefully kill Daji, and they will come after her and kill her if they need to. And so then Rin talks about like how she killed the entire Federation and how they deserved it, and they're not the same like as other people who have killed innocents. And Sorkinsira is like, really, every single person on that island deserves to die, Rin, every single one.
She's like, be real.
I know. It's just like, okay. And they talk about how like the gods are corrupt people and they make them their worst and cruelest instincts, and like that's why they don't trust any of the Nikodans. And they talk about how many people died in the first two Poppy Wars and how like war doesn't really have any good point to it. And then they also talk about the Hesperians and how they should probably get rid of them. And Rin asks them not to. And she's like, well, they believe in one God. They're kind of useless to us. I don't understand why we would keep them around. But she agrees to let them go as long as they take away their weapons. And she kind of has a moment where she goes to say goodbye to Shagan. And she's like, thanks for stepping in for me. And then he asks about what she saw, and she was like, I saw Alton alive next to the seal. I always see Alton. We're both obsessed with him. Come on. And she's like, I saw him happy. He was different, and that's how I will remember him.
He also left like a burn on her.
Oh, yes, he did. On her like chest. And he kind of talks about how like they believe in other worlds. So maybe in another world, Alton is actually happy.
Right.
And he kind of talks about the nature of reality and just a different belief system. And then he tells her not to call them Hinterlander because they're Naimads and Catraids, and they are different people, and calling them Hinterlanders is insulting. And then he also says that he doesn't hate her, and she's like, it seems like you do. He's like, well, I look at you and I see him. And it's like, that's not why. I don't understand. And he said that he was angry at both of them for he saw like all the mistakes Alton made, but he couldn't stop him because he loved him. And he does say that the Republic is a better alternative than anything else. Or she says that. She says that Dashi has to die. And they note that like all three of the people probably have to die. And the Emperor is likely alive somewhere. And then I wonder where. So anyway, they're there, and all of a sudden gunfire breaks out, and it is all the Hesperians, and they are killing the Catraids, and Rin tries to stop them, and she realizes that something is speaking in their heads, and they realize that it is Sorkinsira's son, Bector. And he gets them to kill a lot of the Catraids who were not in support of him, and they set up a coup because he feels like his mother is in the wrong for letting everyone continue. And Kara saves Shagan from gunfire immediately after we figure out how they die, and she gets him to agree to unsync himself from her so that he can continue to live on.
It's funny because it's like 3 pages before this, she asks like, how can we be unbonded? And she's like, well, either you both die or you have to be like right next to each other and you have to agree to separate yourselves.
But you have to be right next to each other.
Exactly.
It's a good thing we were right next to each other.
What happens then? Oh, they're right next to each other, and Kara's like, Shagan, agree to separate yourself from me. It's like, oh, exactly what she said would happen happened.
And then he does it, and he's like, I have to go tell the Nymads that war is coming. And he's now Vector is now a chieftain, so they're in big trouble.
And she's like, he's the chieftain. And Shogun's like, well, yeah, because the Hesperians are the one that shot Sork and Sarah. So why would they not think that he's the chieftain? They're going to believe his story. Other people are going to back him up. So yes, he is.
It's a moot point. It's a cow's opinion. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And he's like, he can say honestly that he did not shoot his mother, nor did his people. He just got other people to do that, also known as a loophole. Mm-hmm. And it's like, this changes everything. Sork and Sierra was the only one keeping the Catraids in check. Now Vector will lead them to slaughter the Nymads. So war has broken out in the north as well. And so they give Shogun a horse, and they say that they will make a raft. And he like gets ready to leave. He says goodbye, and he's like, I don't know what to do. And she says, you fight. And also during this, Vector has like a moment where he's like, oh my God, I just killed my mother. And then he blames Shogun immediately.
I was gonna say, that was strange, but
it was like, you know what you did, but it's almost like he got the shock of like, I can't believe that just happened. Like, and he's like, whoops. I didn't want to do this. You guys made me do it. And it's like, really, bud? No. Really?
That was your plan.
3 pages ago, we learned that you guys were definitely not just hinterlanders under one umbrella, and now there's another civil war. So... and thus ends part 2 of the Dragon Republic. I can't wait to get to the third part. It has
a lot of meaty stuff happens.
So much stuff happens. I feel like I've been talking forever, but
have you read any of the third part yet?
I have read 10 pages into the third.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So this is me fresh. You and I have been pretty good about spoilers. By the end of the Wheel of Time, we were like, so this happened.
I just did not care about spoilers with that. Like, did not care.
14 books later, guess what happened?
It's a lot easier to care about spoilers when it's 3 books versus 14.
And the 3 of them were just repeating each other. Like,
right.
Perrin continues to look for fight. So yes, everyone. I hope you guys are reading the book. I hope you're enjoying it. Some people are just following along with the book now. They're not even reading it anymore. So welcome to our synopses of this book. Laura and I like it a lot. We're fans. So please also remember to join us next week to finish this off, and rate, review, and subscribe to us. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing is a great way to get people in on the conversation. You should also reach out and follow us at Our Pod. That's OWWR Pod on Instagram and Twitter, or look at our website, ourpod.com, for some great blog posts where we often review books. Or send us an email at ourpod@gmail.com. We are open on all the airwaves, and we love hearing from you guys. Let us know what your thoughts on the Dragon Republic, and how much you hate Nezha, because boy, do I hate him. He's the worst. Sister Petra may be worse than him, but that's only because she's blatantly
yeah.
But you know, beggars can't be choosers, and Rin apparently likes him. Don't know why, girl. Don't know why. But yeah, join us next week, and this has been fun talking to you all. Watch out for ghosts. Bye.